Every worker on that factory floor had begged him to fix it. He laughed, signed the check to keep it running, and walked away. But what happens when the one man who controls all the danger decides to take a walk through his own factory floor? Raymond Colt built his fortune on iron and noise. His factory, Colt Industrial Fabrication, sat on the edge of Youngstown, Ohio. Inside, furnaces burned at 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Machines the size of trucks stamped and crushed and pressed metal parts around the clock. The noise never stopped. The heat never left. And Raymond liked it that way. To him, the factory wasn't a place where people worked. It was a machine that made him rich. Raymond was 58 years old, broad-shouldered, and used to getting what he wanted. He drove a black Mercedes to the front gate every morning, never to the workers' entrance. He wore polished shoes that had never touched the factory floor. His office sat high above the production line, behind tinted glass, so he could look down at the workers below without ever breathing the same air they breathed. He had built Colt Industrial from a single press machine into a $12 million operation, and he was proud of every dollar. But the workers below his window lived a different reality. The main production floor had a section the men called the pit. It was a narrow walkway that ran alongside the primary smelting vat, a container holding up to 800 gallons of liquid metal at any given moment. The railing that was supposed to separate workers from that vat was bent, rusted, and in 2 places completely missing. Her workers had filed 6 formal complaints in 18 months. One man, a floor supervisor named Dale Pruitt, had submitted photographs, written reports, and even a cost estimate showing the repair would take 4 hours and cost less than $900. Raymond had seen every single report. He had initialed the last one himself. Then he did nothing. The reason was simple and cold. Fixing the railing meant halting that section of the line for half a shift. Half a shift meant lost output. Lost output meant lost money. And Raymond Colt did not lose money. Not for broken metal, not for worried workers, not for anyone. Dale had looked up at that tinted office window more than once and wondered if the man behind it understood what he was sitting above. He did. He just didn't care. 3 weeks before Raymond Colt died, a worker named Luis Ferreira nearly didn't go home. Luis was 34 years old, a father of 2, and had worked the smelting line for 6 years. He knew the pit better than anyone. He knew exactly where the railing wobbled, exactly which section had rusted through at the base, and exactly how close a person could stand before the edge became dangerous. On the morning of March 4th, Luis was moving a collection rod along the walkway when his boot caught the uneven steel grating. He lurched forward. His hip hit the damaged railing section hard. The metal groaned and shifted outward by nearly 4 inches. He grabbed the wall with both hands, heart hammering, and held himself there for 3 full seconds above liquid iron burning at 2,800 degrees. Then he steadied himself and walked away, shaking, silent, alive. Whereas Luis filed a report before his shift ended. He described the moment in detail, including the measurement 4 inches of outward movement from a single impact. He wrote that the railing would not survive another hit. He signed it and handed it to his floor manager by 3 p.m. The floor manager forwarded it upstairs by 4 p.m. Raymond's assistant placed it on his desk before 5 p.m. Raymond left for a dinner reservation at 5:15. The report sat on his desk overnight. The next morning, Raymond called Plant Operations Manager Greg Solis into his office. Greg had been pushing for the railing repair for 4 months. He walked in expecting approval. Instead, Raymond slid the report across the desk and told him to stop frightening the workforce. He said Luis was being dramatic, that the railing had stood for 11 years, and that if it were truly dangerous, someone would have gone in already. Greg tried to push back. Raymond cut him off. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. Greg walked out with nothing. He told investigators later that he had never felt so powerless in his working life. 2 workers had now come within seconds of dying at that exact railing. The repair still cost less than $900. Raymond still chose profit. And somewhere below his tinted window, the furnace kept burning at 2,800 degrees, patient and indifferent, waiting for whoever came next. Raymond Colt had not walked the production floor in over 2 years. He had no reason to. That was what floor managers were for. But on the morning of March 22nd, everything changed. A buyer from a large Detroit manufacturing firm was flying in to inspect the facility before signing a supply contract worth close to $3 million. Raymond had been working on this deal for 7 months. He was not going to leave the tour to anyone else. He put on his best suit, had his assistant prepare a printed floor plan, and told Greg Solis to run the line at full capacity so the buyer could see the operation live. Every furnace, every press, every vat running hot. Raymond met the buyer, Charles Whitfield, in the front lobby at 10 a.m. They reviewed specifications in the boardroom for 40 minutes. Then Charles said he wanted to see the smelting process up close before he committed anything to paper. He was not a man who approved contracts from a distance. Raymond smiled and led him through the main doors. And the heat hit both men immediately, thick and pressing, the way a furnace door feels when it swings open. Raymond had forgotten what the floor actually felt like. The noise settled into his chest like something physical. Workers glanced up and looked away. Dale Pruitt spotted Raymond from 40 feet across the floor and felt his stomach tighten. He knew exactly where a hands-on tour of the smelting line would end. He started moving toward them. Raymond guided Charles toward the pit walkway, talking loudly over the machinery, gesturing at the vat, citing output figures and melt temperatures. He stepped onto the narrow walkway first, 3 steps in, when his polished shoe caught the same uneven steel grating that Luis Ferreira's boot had found 3 weeks earlier. But Raymond had no instinct for this floor. He had never stood in this spot, and he went forward faster and harder than Luis had, with nothing to grab and no muscle memory to save him. His right side hit the damaged railing section at full body weight. The base bolts, corroded and stress-fractured well past their limit, gave way in under a second. The railing swung outward. Raymond followed it. Dale Pruitt reached the walkway entrance 2 seconds later. Charles Whitfield stood at the threshold, unable to move. The vat below did not pause. It did not register the weight that entered it. It simply continued doing what it had always done, burning at 2,800 degrees, consuming everything it touched. The Youngstown coroner's office listed the cause of death as thermal injuries, consistent with full immersion in molten ferrous metal. There was not enough left of Raymond Colt to require a traditional examination. But what investigators recovered from the cooled vat 2 days later was documented in 4 sentences and placed into an evidence bag. He was 58 years old. He had owned the building. He had initialed the complaints. He had chosen the outcome. OSHA's investigation ran 11 weeks. Inspectors pulled every document that had crossed Raymond's desk. They found 6 formal safety complaints, 2 near-miss incident reports, 1 cost estimate for $900, and the photographs Luis Ferreira had attached to his final submission, showing the exact anchor bolts that failed. Every document bore evidence of receipt. Every one had been dismissed. The agency's findings stated that Colt Industrial Fabrication had committed repeated, willful violations of 29 CFR 1910.23, yet the federal standard governing the guarding of open-sided floors and platforms near hazardous equipment. The fine and combined legal settlement assessed against the company totaled $410,000. $900 would have fixed it. $410,000 was the price of not fixing it. The gap between those two numbers is where Raymond Colt's decisions lived and where he died. No criminal charges were filed. They rarely are. The factory was placed into receivership 14 months later to cover the liabilities Raymond had accumulated. Luis Ferreira still works in industrial manufacturing. He checks every railing before he takes a single step, every single day. Greg Solis kept the original $900 repair estimate, not as a trophy, as a reminder of what a life looks like when it has been priced and found too expensive. Dale Pruitt said it plainest of all when investigators asked him what he wanted people to understand. He said he knew. He signed his name to knowing. And then he walked out there in shoes that had never touched that floor and found out exactly what the rest of us had been living with. Raymond Colt paid $410,000 to keep that railing broken. The cruelest part is not that he died there. It is that every worker who had ever filed a complaint, every man who had grabbed a wall and steadied himself above that vat, already knew that walkway would take someone eventually. They just never imagined it would take him.